for me to be in the US right now with the way that things are. And so I'm really grateful, I think, to be in a space with other people who care about people and probably
Mhm.
care about the planet and sustainability. So I'm grateful for that.
Well, fantastic. And we just got two new arrivals. So Tati and Ada, I hope you can hear us. Can you?
Yeah, sorry. Hello. Sorry for the delay.
No, yeah, that's all right. So Tati, where are you?
Hello.
Yeah, where are you, Tati?
I'm in Costa Rica. I live in Limon, so very
Okay.
close to the beach. So I'm happy to be here, share thoughts about people. Uh, I have like super high expectations because I took before the positive leadership
Okay.
training. So I'm super happy to be here. Nice to meet you all.
Fantastic. Last but not least, Ada or Ada, where are you?
Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. My name is Ada from Zambia, Sub-Saharan Africa.
Wow. Okay. Well, fantastic. Welcome. So, welcome everybody. It's wonderful to have. We have about, I think it's about 17 people registered for the course. That means there's quite a percentage here being able to be here. I've had a couple of people say they had other commitments today and so couldn't make it. They're going to try to make it next week. So obviously, I'm recording the session. I'll be sharing it out later, and that will be helpful for those who weren't able to be here. Today is more of a sort of introductory, getting the basics together, maybe uh, sharing the language of sustainability, sustainable development, and regeneration, and the distinction between each. And because each of us may be in a different stage of understanding of this language or this vocabulary, I obviously don't want to bore people with those who are experts. But on the other hand, I also want to make sure that everybody understands some of the distinctions in the language that we use, that these terms are not actually interchangeable. They actually have each a place in the lexicon, and so it's important that we understand these. But that this is just very basic and not intended to again just drag on. I really want to make sure that you're all very clear as to what the course is about and where we're going as from today into the future. Next week's session, hopefully you can all be here because that's when we're going to go more deeply into the regenerative leadership framework. And just to give you a bird's eye view of that, this is the result of my own research, my own doctoral research a few years ago here in the United States, and also consulting work with organizations, both nonprofits, for profits, and education. So the framework actually spans this new approach. This is like, well, we coined it with the people like I actually did my research with now 15 years ago. Because we were no longer happy with the term sustainability. It was just getting old already, and we needed something new. So this idea of regenerative practice, regenerative leadership, and now this has become much more common and frequently used, and we're going to be exploring that in greater depth and how it applies to you and what you're already doing that is already regenerative, rather than just seeking to reach some sort of sustainability, which is a nightmare for engineers and all the people who have to actually report and be accountable for how much money they save by changing out the lights or saving waste or other things. So we want to get beyond that into something a little deeper, and that's some of the intent of the course. Do you have any questions at this time before I share my screen? Okay. Were you all able to actually browse week one materials? And do you have any questions on that? Any impressions? Anything that comes to mind at this time? So one of the things we've done, and I've done myself, is trying to ensure that I curate some materials. There is just such a vast resource out there that it's impossible to cater to the needs of everybody. So if you find that there are not the resources that you can see here are just not within your wheelhouse or your interest, let me know. We can certainly explore and seek out and do some research into things that are closer to what you are interested in doing. In the meantime, we have here the key. Oops, where did we go? Sorry about that. The presentation here, the recording was about key principles. Does anybody have any questions about the definitions of sustainability or sustainable development or regeneration? Are these concepts clear to you? Or do you want me to go through them with you?
I prefer to go through it together. From my side, I would like to hear from you as well, please.
Okay, all right. Would that work for everybody?
Yes, from my side too.
Okay, Ross?
Yes, same, because yes, I would like to hear from you. Thank you.
Okay, so this includes some of the overview of the course. So you've all received, well, I told you all about that, the personal leadership action plan based on the self-assessment. Have you all been able to download that, take a look at it, and actually begin to do the self-assessment? Some of you have already sent it to me and I've provided some feedback, and some of you are going to do some more work on it. So all of this is part of the next few days, that self-assessment where you actually go through the questionnaire. Let me just go back to that so you can actually see, just in case you have missed it. This is actually in the general page here. And if you respond, it'd be nice. I wonder why that's not working. Oh, it is working. So in the general page down here, you have the link to both major assignments for the course: the sustainability self-assessment as a leader and the action plan. At the end of that form of the action plan, which is, let me just share it with you. This particular document is the one where you're going to just assess yourself in all of these criteria just by scoring yourselves from 1 to 5. And then once you've selected 1 or 2 or 3 where you feel that you could do better, you'd like to work on yourself, then you actually just extract this table. Here's an example of this action plan table with what you'd like to work on yourself, with your actions, who you're going to do it with, the timeline for this, and then some sort of desirable outcomes or KPIs or key performance indicators. It is intended to be about you, not about your team. So this is an intent for you to begin working on, or to continue working on, qualities, behaviors, or skills that you are doing. Obviously, we all do all of these things, but that you would like to do some more work on. And then send it to me by email, and I'll provide feedback. Is that clear enough?
I did have a question, actually.
Absolutely.
Can we, yeah, I was assuming, so I've done a draft of mine and I put things on that were not that did not come out in the assessment, but I know that there are things that kind of fit that I would like to work on, and I was assuming that that was fine as well.
Would you dare to share, for example, what that might be?
Well, so one of the things that I want to do is that I'm a mindfulness teacher, and I had a sort of mindfulness sessions that I was holding for nonprofit leaders, and so I was thinking I want to recruit another cohort, and it seemed very aligned with sort of changing in consciousness and like sharing and things like that. So I was thinking that sort of belongs on my plan. It seems to me part of this work, but it's not necessarily on the plan. It's not sort of something that I came to from that, but I was thinking that it uses a number of the capacities within the plan that I assess myself on.
So can you actually condense that into an objective?
Well, I was, first off, do it. And, that would be, I have to write things about it. I have to reach out to people. I was thinking about integrating some of this language into my materials and then facilitating those as a way of leaders coming together and being in a different space and a different kind of environment to build skills in awareness and presence.
Okay. But the objective is to develop your capacity for mindfulness in yourself and others. Is that
No, because I mean, yes, so it's to develop my I mean, I always see it as developing my own skills as well as those of the people who would be in the class. So I see it as kind of deepening my practice, but also a way of integrating new things I learn from here into something I'm already doing.
okay? No, absolutely. And just when you've actually done the work, just send it to me. I'll be glad to review it.
Okay.
And if this, this goes to everybody. If at any time you'd like to meet with me individually, we can certainly schedule via Zoom a meeting during the course at a separate time to go over the project or to go over this. Anything you'd like to do that you'd like to meet with me, we can certainly do that. Faraz, you have a question?
Yeah, so thank you for the explanation and the questions from the team. I understand from the form when I download it, it's not mandatory to share unless it is required the feedback from you to send it only by emails, right?
Yes, you just email it to me. So you all have my email, just the table. So the questionnaire is yours. And as Sarah was saying, if you have other qualities and skills you want to work on, that questionnaire is not exhaustive. It doesn't cover everything under the sun. So there may be things that you'd like to work on. If you are a coach and you want to work on coaching skills, maybe there is something there that's not included, though it is a fairly comprehensive questionnaire. But again, it certainly does not pretend to be exhaustive. So yes, and the idea is to get this out of the way so we can then focus on the project itself. So if you can send this to me in the next few days, again, there is no right or wrong plan. It's just you'll get some feedback from me. We can have a conversation or discussion. And then the idea is that this is not an assignment for the teacher. This is something for yourself that you really want to work on. So if there is something, like Sarah said, that you do not find in the questionnaire that you'd really like to work on yourself, because it's personal, then put that in and then let's see how it works out. Okay? So let's continue because we have until 11:30 and we've got some ground to cover. But at any time, just ask. So the second requirement for the course is the project, which is the regenerative project, which is the outline of whatever you are doing in your work. And the project, again, looks like this. Let me pull that up. So you can download this, and the project, this is the outline you can use as your template just to fill in. And in the next week or so, what I'd like you to do is just to answer this first part to some degree. It's just your initial thoughts as to what you were working on that you'd like to do better or more about. And then as we go, obviously, we'll incorporate the regenerative leadership framework and its components and principles. But I'd really be keen to see what it is that you are working on that want to do more with, or something new. Some of you have had academics who'd like to get into doing something in education, obviously in nonprofit work. Some of you are working in Africa, some are working in Europe, Middle East, in obviously Western country. All of you are doing very different things, but all of them can share some of the key principles. Again, going back to what Sarah was saying about mindfulness, mindfulness is not within the purview of business or education. It applies to all of us. And that common humanity is something that we're going to be exploring, and how that can be replicated across any domain. So any field of experience or any industry. So seeing what it actually is more universal that we can apply, not just understand, but apply in ways that can help transform the work that you're doing for better results. So this is the intent of the outline. And my focus, as I said, I can't and won't tell you what to do. What we will be focusing on here is in the leadership aspect of the how. And that's where the framework comes in, as we call it the RLF, or the Regenerative Leadership Framework. How can this help you understand what you're doing well and what other elements you can bring in to actually transform the work that you do? Does that make sense?
Thank you very much.
All right. So going back to here, and going back to, hopefully this will jump around more quickly. There we go. So in the presentation, the PowerPoint, which is also recorded, we have a couple of things. So these are the objectives of the course. And I'm not going to read them, you can all read, so you can do that. And I've already mentioned some of these things. I've actually shared with you week by week one of the chapters from my book. So for this week, the readings was chapter 1, and that's posted there. That's Leading for Regeneration. So each week there was a chapter. The first one goes into, again, an introduction to leadership for sustainability and beyond, and getting into some of the things that we'll discuss more in greater depth next week. Chapter 2 gets into the framework, which is what we'll be discussing next week. Chapter 3 gets into the journey of individual regenerative leaders from my research, and people from Guatemala, India, in business and education, in nonprofit work. So all sorts of different people who share their journeys and what they've done that can actually inspire you maybe to think about some of the things that you do and how you can move forward or evolve in your own work. And then finally, the chapter 4 is about the journeys of organizations. So that you can look at how these particular leaders, the same leaders that I worked with in chapter 3, actually how their organizations have evolved towards what we call greater degrees of sustainability. We're all in the journey. None of us is already there. So it's all a work in progress. But how can we do that? By and try to meet one key principle. How can we, if not eliminate, minimize unintended consequences of the decisions that we make? Can we put that into the design process? So that's one of the key things that we'll be discussing. So we've already gone through the assignments. The other requirement is that most of you have actually posted in the introduction, where you introduce yourself in the general forum. Each week there is a discussion forum with a question for you to answer. And since this is one of the few moments that you get to interact with each other than the live session, we do keep track of and review who does actually post in the discussion forum each week. So I strongly encourage you to do so. One, because obviously you can say things at greater length than in this environment. You can get responses, you can build your network. So it is an opportunity for you to build your professional network across the planet. As you can see, there are people from all over the place. And then there's an option each week. There's a journal, which is a reflective journal that comes only to me. So if you want to answer the question in the reflective journal, that'll come to me and I'll be glad to read it and then provide some feedback and engage in an online conversation, which can then be translated into a personal meeting if you'd like it. All right? So 3 requirements for the certificate, and for those of you going for the diploma: the self-assessment with that action plan, the regenerative project, and posting in the forum. So, Sarah, to answer your initial question, these are the requirements of the pieces where we really want to see your presence and participation. If you have nothing to say or you can't, then obviously we don't want to make this busy work. Don't just do it because you have to. If it needs to be meaningful and mindful. So, quick round of questions here. And because some of people are not on camera, I'm not so sure about putting people into breakout rooms. Normally I do that, but since there's not that many of you, let's do a quick round of, and let's start with Destin. Why don't we start with you? Let's answer the first question. what impact are you seeking to have or grow or develop further? So what's your work and what would you like to do more of? Sorry, Destin, I was asking you.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't get that. The question, what impact I'm seeking to have or grow? Oh, that's a good question. Impact. I would like to have an impact in as I'm following the global leadership diploma. I'd like to have an impact in globally, if I would say. And actually, I founded this association or NGO in Burundi, France, and we actually are having an impact as well in French-speaking Africa. So I'd like to have to solve problems in these different countries, if I would say, globally. Yeah, I don't know if I answered good to the question, but yeah.
That's right. This is just an initial sort of investigation,
Professor Kenong,
exploration.
how this current.
You just froze. Can you hear us?
I beg your pardon, I didn't get you question. The connection cut.
Yes, you just froze. That's all right. So let me just place this in context. So when we talk about impact, at least in regeneration, we're talking about, I don't know if you're all being able to read about, you're all maybe familiar with the triple bottom line of sustainability, that we try to integrate environmental issues, economic issues, and social issues. And in the end, these are the three legs of the stool of sustainability. And in the end, it's all about well-being of species and people and the natural environment. Whereas what we propose in regeneration is the triple top line, is how can we grow prosperity, celebrate community, and enhance the health of all species for all time, which is a bit of a big vision, but the intent is to move away from accountability into something more conscious about what we do. So in your case, Destin, you might be wanting to impact issues of poverty, issues of health, issues of the natural environment where people live, giving people access to economic opportunity, so being able to do work, gain access to health and education, or all of the above. In regeneration, we try to find those places that we can actually use levers that will mobilize all of these factors, not just one or two. Because one of the problems that we have with NGOs is they tend to have a single bottom line, which is addressing poverty or health or whatever it is, one thing. Whereas everything in this universe is interdependent, it's integrated. And so we cannot focus on just one thing without negatively impacting other factors. So one of the conversations we're going to be having ongoing is how do we consider all factors? While we focus on our priority, how do we consider all the other interdependent factors that will be affected, particularly if your work scales up and where you have a greater impact, a greater carbon footprint, a greater impact on the environment, a greater impact on society, excluding other people. So there's all sorts of consequences to the decisions we make. So there's no need to answer more in depth, just something to think about the impact you would like to have or that you're having already and that you want to expand. So let's move again. Bryn, where are you with this?
So Sarah Griffiths and I are in this program together.
Oh, okay. You together. Okay.
Yeah. So we co-lead a program called the Community Leadership Accelerator. And I'm an executive and leadership coach, do facilitation and consultation in organizations. So I am always oriented towards helping leaders become more conscious of their leadership. And really, you just spoke of the single bottom line. I'm really interested in helping leaders. Triple top line, I like that. But have a more holistic lens to their
Mhm.
leadership and their organizations. Yeah, I was going to say something more and it just fell out of my head. So I think that's probably
Okay,
good
so
enough.
a more holistic
Oh,
approach,
oh
right?
no, sorry,
Go
I
ahead.
did remember. So, you know, I'm sure this is true for most organizations at this point in time, particularly in the nonprofit sector. Leaders are constantly overloaded,
Mhm.
and particularly in the times that we're in, very distracted. And so I'm, we're living in this time of sort of living beyond human scale, like honing my own abilities to help leaders slow down enough
Mhm.
to really get intentional, to be mindful, to wrestle a little with the complexity that exists, rather than sort of defaulting to let's simplify to make it easier. I think those are all things within what I'm trying to do.
Fantastic. Well, we'll see if we can actually put some meat on those bones in the next few weeks.
Awesome.
Sarah, would you like to compliment anything that Bryn says there?
Yeah, I mean, Bryn and I are separate people. We work together, and our separate work is also quite complementary. Um, so, I think that as I was thinking about it, the triple top line really spoke to me actually in the materials. And I saw, there was the triangle, and then I was thinking about people that we work with generally, they're focused on the equity and they move probably quite easily into the economics because they want people to be treated fairly, they want to pay people fairly, they want the economies of what they're doing to work. And then it seemed to me that kind of moving from ecology down the two sides of the triangle, that seems a little bit more challenging unless you're working with organizations that deal like squarely with the environment. And so although I'm not trying to do this now, this isn't the impact I'm trying to have particularly, but I was interested in thinking about the questions in the middle because I think that they provide a scaffold between the ecology and the three sides of the triangle. So I'm not quite answered. I've answered. I'm like a politician. I've answered a different question, but
That's all right. So Sarah's referring
yeah.
to what we call the fractal model of sustainability here, where, again, going back to the triple bottom line, and this is one of the slides in the presentation, how do we balance equity, economics, and ecology, or society, prosperity, and the natural environment? And how do we do that so that all three are integrated in such a way that we reach what we call the sweet spot of sustainability? And I don't know if you are familiar with fractal geometry, which is the concept that the universe is structured in the same way from the infinitesimal size of subatomic reality to the galaxies, and they all move in the same way, they're all constructed in the same way, and our minds should operate in that way as well. And yet we find ourselves limiting our thinking and our action to some dimensions of reality rather than all of them. Because it's very hard to actually do that, as Sarah just mentioned. How do you get leaders now and ourselves to actually integrate these three so that we have this equitable economics where everybody's respected and paid fairly, at the same time that our economics are ecologically friendly, so we're doing something that's positive for the environment, and that even our equity is also environmentally sustainable. So how do we maintain the health of our employees in a factory is an environmental issue. So all of these together make for a very complex mix. And figuring that out is part of that growth in our consciousness and how we actually address this so that people realize that for business people, you can be profitable and equitable and environmentally friendly. People don't make that connection. So companies like Walmart have done fairly good work in, for example, being more environmentally sustainable with a fleet of electric trucks. but they still pay minimum wage because they always have a guarantee that you'll always get the lowest price with us. And they can't do that if they actually raise wages. So some of these organizations, whether nonprofit or for profit, they suffer from the contradictions of the system and the machine that they have built. So, how do you help them move away from that system into healthier systems is a real challenge. It's not easy. So, certainly things to be thinking about as we go forward. So, let's move on. Melanie, what is your desire? What is that you would like to be impactful in?
Oh, thank you. So I'm currently in a doctoral program, and my dissertation is actually about regenerative leadership. So, Dr. Hardman, I was ecstatic to see you're teaching this course. I didn't even know when I signed up, and you're the most cited and influential scholar right now in my work. So, this is extra special for me. In addition to and I found this line of work by thinking about what are what's the intersection of the things that I care the most about? And here it was perfectly. So I've been a leader in organizations for about 20 years across the US. And I feel like what I said in my response was it's given me a front row seat to all the many ways that our systems are broken and dysfunctional, our leadership systems and leadership models. And I just see people suffering so much in the workplace. And I think, especially in the US, mental health is in steep decline. Like people are really, really struggling. And the workplace environment often is a key factor in a lot of that. And so my hope with my teams in particular is, and then to be able to hopefully spread that to more organizations, is to implement this type of leadership model and help people to sort of move along to a more sustainable solution that is healthier for all the organizations and the people in them. And so right now I lead communications. I'm an executive communications leader for we're sort of nonprofit. It's an academic health institution, large one in the US. So I've got a team of about 25 people who we do internal and external communications, which is hard to do right now with the sort of legislative and federal policy things that are happening in the US. It's a high crisis, high stress sort of environment for my employees. And so I'd really love to be able to implement a lot of this in my own leadership to help my employees thrive as well.
Interesting. So, what program are you in and where?
I lead strategic communications for the University of Washington medical system, UW Medicine.
So you're doing a PhD there?
No, I'm doing it at Antioch University.
Okay. But the program is, what is the actual program? Is it health?
Do you mean my doctoral program? It's a doctorate of education. Yeah.
Oh, doctorate of education. Okay. So you're not focusing on health in particular. You're focusing
No, that's just my day job. So in my graduate studies, I'm focusing on trying to create, programs so we could get, this great work out and teach it to more leaders and organizations.
Okay. But the doctorate in education normally has to do with education. So
yeah, so it's creating educational programming to help teach this. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. I'd love to see what your work, and if I can help it in any way, just let me know.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Tati, what are you wanting to have an impact on?
I work in a board company, and I have 13 direct reports, and they are cultural because I have under me all the American region. So they came from Peru, from Argentina, even with United States. So similar with Melanie, I want to be like a agent change in my organizations. So I want to have this, or I want to develop these skills to have impact first in my team, because for me I enjoying a lot my work. So I want to have this holistic change, because as she mentioned before, in the workplaces, the environment sometimes it's not, or sometimes it's challenging, and so I want to have this like change in the organization.
Right.
And I want
Fantastic.
to share to do a pilot plan with my team first, and I want to see if I can, share with my organization and have impact.
Good. Fantastic. So I don't know if you know, but if you want to do this in Spanish, we can certainly work on that in Spanish.
No, it's okay.
Oh, okay, that's fine. I don't have any other languages, but Spanish would be fine.
But
Feras,
so
what about
super
you?
kind from your side. Thank you.
Sure. Feras, what's your impact?
Yeah. Ultimately, my impact goal is simple to contribute to a world that is not just less bad, but actively good. Firas Ayub, I just, if, in 1 minute, if you allow me, I'm working in construction sector.
Okay.
I'm preparing for, this is my last session in the Global Leadership Diploma.
Oh, good.
I joined in the summer of the last year. And I'm understanding this week material, and in summary, the capture is essence of shifting from mindset of obligation to one of the opportunity and personal items, which is the central theme of my first week. So I'm still learning this through the long journey that I have in the leadership, and that's it. Thank you.
Right. No, that sounds good. I actually was on the board of the U.S. Green Building Council. Are you familiar with the U.S. GBC? Firas?
Yes, please.
Are you familiar with the U.S. Green Building Council?
Yes, we have we use it in the reference. We see it in
Okay.
the references in our daily work. Usually, we have two codes or regulations, which is Europe or US.
Okay.
So yes, I'm aware of.
Okay. So we can explore that in your project if you're interested. We can certainly find some materials that might be helpful, but look more interested in seeing where you are and how advanced you are where you are, and seeing how you can take that forward.
Yeah.
Interesting, fantastic.
In our daily life, in all projects that I'm working on, we have to define the lead and Mustadam requirements and sustainability requirements. So these
Right.
three terms, we have to define it because it have a cost impact and time impact based on the requirement in the issued RFPs. So, or request for proposals. So it is a mandatory to read carefully all these requirements because it's have an impact in our construction daily life in the projects.
Fantastic. Well, that's good. Great to hear. Ross, what's your work?
So that's a very hard question, especially because I've been wearing my whole life multiple hats. I have a paid job, I have unpaid jobs, I take projects, and I do whatever I can within 24 hours, and in different fields. But one thing that I started reflecting since, well, for this year is I want to improve how I can do public relations or public speaking, because most of the time I've been the first Latino, the first Peruvian, and the first transgender person in a sector, in a room, in a conversation, and that takes a lot of responsibility, of course, but also how to communicate better all the layers of identity from cultural or from a discipline domain, because I'm a biologist, but I also work with artists and I do everything. And then there is a layer of identity, right? So I want to learn better how can I communicate better my experience on navigating leadership spaces that were like there wasn't any Peruvian before, there wasn't any Latino before, there wasn't a transgender person before. So I think that's into that reflection.
Interesting space. Are you familiar with the term intersectionality?
Oh, yes, 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 yes.
Okay.
I've been coming around like because yes, I tick a lot of boxes.
Okay, right. So for the rest of you, for those of you not familiar with intersectionality, it's this understanding that we all have multiple identities. And that these identities we keep to ourselves and we share with different people in different contexts. And therefore, somebody who, for example, in Ross's situation, might not share his identity, true gender identity, in certain circles because that would be risky. Whereas all the others might be accepted and even approved and loved by other circles. So, how do you become integral and whole and always be totally yourself when some of our identities are not accepted in certain circles? And how do you establish then a communications program or a way to connect with others? We are all seeking for connection. How do you connect when you don't know if somebody is going to accept who you truly are, as you are? And that's a fascinating space and a very, very problematic one. And in the United States, here, of course, we have a huge problem. We've got a crisis. Feras, you have a question? And then we'll get to Ada to finish off here, the round.
Sorry to interrupt. Just I would like to add more about the background that I have and how it will connect to this 4 weeks.
Okay.
Based on my CV over the and the experience that I have. In the old operating system, usually as I'm working in the construction proposals and tendering, usually we have in the old time or the old operating system, how do we win the bid and deliver the project on the time and on a budget? And nowadays, I think the new operating system, which is the regenerative question here, how do we win the bid and deliver the project in a way that grows and celebrate the community and enhance the health of all the team members all the time. So I think in the last 13 years, if I'm not mistaken, in my life, I'm mastering the economics and the process, the
Right.
corner in the triangle that you show us on the slide. But this program, it's my opportunity here to master the ecology and the deep equity corners. I
Right.
think this is my goal here to focus on these two, ecology and equity corners. I think it will help me to finally operate from every center of the fractal triangle. Thank you.
No, this is this is important work of how to get away from the single or double bottom line to the triple bottom or even triple top line. And absolutely. So, Ross, you wanted to say something additional? Anything further?
Oh no, I forgot to raise to lower the hand. But just a very short comment on this. As a person, as a life experience, is that I didn't want to restrain myself going to spaces because I've been in very like considered risky spaces. But I believe that like in that decision, my priority was to be the first Peruvian in the space instead of the first transgender. It's like, yes, like, choosing when to disclose and how to navigate at the end. What's the purpose of the meeting and how can I contribute, right? So it's been very interesting, but now I want to put it into words.
Yeah, and into practice. No, and I admire you for your courage. This is important work, and the fact that in the end we are all human, and our identity is as valuable, whatever that identity is to everybody, and what you can contribute is critically important. But you do have to have the courage to do it, and that doing that is can't be easy. So I commend you. Ada, what are you wanting to make an impact in? Ada, are you there?
Hello, are you able to get me?
Yes, yes, yes. So what do you want to increase your impact in?
Okay, so I'm currently working as a project lead for a nonprofit organization back home, which is called the Linon Foundation. And so most of the work that we do is that we try to provide sustainable development initiatives. And notably, there's a project that we're currently working on that is aimed at advancing climate action within 3 program streams that we're working on. And so one of the things that I'm hoping for to take from this course is just to have like the practical knowledge of how I can be able to effectively support the project. Thank you very much.
No, on the contrary, that's a great. You'll find in the first week in the resources, there's a TED talk about how to end poverty by Andrew Yoon. And so in the first week, there is a link there in one of the videos that might be helpful as a resource. But certainly looking forward to continue the conversation. So, coming back, as you can see, we've got a diversity of interests, places, and directions that you're all going in. So my challenge is how can we all turn this into a shared and common conversation where we can extract the common principles, where all of this can be made to work for each and any of you in whatever space you're in. And that's obviously one of the challenges of over the next weeks. So again, we've talked a little bit about this. So I'd like you to answer the forum discussion post, obviously, about what you've learned about yourself and sustainability this week and what you're interested in. But let's move forward into a couple of the definitions. So you're probably familiar with these, but I really wanted to make sure that I want to hit on these just very briefly to make sure that we understand the difference between the end game of sustainability and the process of sustainability, which is sustainable development. So sustainability is the end goal, that in the end, everything can continue forever. But in order to do that, we have to engage in the process of getting there. This is what we're working on in the project. So how do we actually create a process that actually goes towards sustainable development? And I can get into the Brundtland report of our common future from 1987 and sustainable development, which is when the United Nations brought this term out for the first time, where for the first time they included social and equity concerns and the concerns and the challenges of poverty along with environmental concerns. That's when the United Nations brings together what was happening on the environmental side and on the social side and brings them together, again, with economics. So that again, for anybody who wants to go deeper, there's lots of materials on that, and I can share with you if you're interested. This is a brief graphic of what is happening and what we are doing. There is no other creature on this planet that does this. So we can't lay the blame on the birds or the whales or the trees. It's all us and what we are doing today to the planet in all of these socioeconomic trends, in this huge acceleration in how we are exhausting the natural resources of the planet. And then in the Earth system trends, how we increasing the accumulation of carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, methane in the atmosphere, how we're actually reducing the forest. So how our impact, because we're getting to 7.5 billion people on the planet, how the planet's carrying capacity is being exhausted. So the challenge to us is not only how can we address this, but the sustainability leader perspective is how can we slow down this process. From the regenerative leadership perspective is how can we turn this into opportunity? How can we turn this into something positive rather than negative? How can we go away from moral responsibility and our obligation to an opportunity and an exciting adventure that we can go on together? As leaders, how can we motivate people rather than try to beat them down with doom and gloom? The sort of the Al Gore discourse that we're going to be dying from the accumulation of greenhouse gases if we don't hurry up. These are the unfortunate ways that leaders have. And here's that report from 1987. Here's some of the visuals. These are some of the old and newer visual descriptions of sustainability or the triple bottom line. John Elkington, who's in my book, he coined the triple bottom line term and icon. And then somebody who's certainly somebody I follow a lot at MIT is Peter Senge and his protege, we'll get back to that. Anyway, this idea of the nested system, I think this is incredibly insightful. In what we do, everything is driven by the economy. We need to make money. We need to pay the bills. Everybody needs somehow to generate income. But that is not isolated from the impacts within society and within the greater environment. So this nested system is a very interesting one when, for example, Ferris, when talking with clients, how do you incorporate this understanding, this awareness of whatever you build is going to have an impact on society and on the environment. So this is an interesting model. Still not regenerative, but it's getting there. And so regeneration as distinct from sustainable development, I have defined, and I'll get to it in a second, Destin. The idea is can we restore the damage that we've done? Can we actually redesign everything we do? One of you actually mentioned things, I think it was Melanie, talking about how healthcare in the United States is broken. When you take a look at human systems, they're all broken. They're all obsolete. They all don't serve people. They all have problems. They've all been created with an old mindset that has brought us to where we are. Based on, initially, and this we can trace back to René Descartes and rationalism, and then Francis Bacon and the scientific method, all of which actually made reason the god and intuition and imagination the servant. As Einstein said, imagination should be the master and reason should be the servant. We have turned this on its head. We have tried to solve our problems using rationality. And this is where we are today. And unfortunately, this is not being helpful. So regeneration is an attempt to restore the better way to actually approach our issues. Destin, you have a comment?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Actually, I was asking myself a kind of, if I would say, a weird question about the regenerative. The question I have is that what would you say are the earliest indicators a project or a leader that is moving from sustainable or sustainability towards genuinely, I would say, regenerative impact?
Sure. So that's your question. How do we move from one to the next? Yeah, that is the $64 million question, because it brings us into a very uncomfortable decision that we need to make. Do we have the courage to actually share with everybody else that the work that we do is obsolete, that we can only change what we do when we change who we are? This is the essence of regeneration, regenerative leadership, regenerative practice. And we can't change what we are until we acknowledge that the way we see reality is flawed, is full of mistakes. Reality is not as we see it or as we want it. It is as it is, and it's going to continue operating as it is, however we see it. So the closer we can become truly objective in how we perceive reality, taking away our cultural conditioning, our educational programming, everything we've been taught to be successful, none of this is really working, because otherwise there would be no poverty, there would be no disease, we wouldn't have overpopulation, we wouldn't have pollution, we wouldn't have energy systems that are destroying the planet. We would have something completely different. And that completely different is something we need to figure out. But we can't do that by changing our behaviors, because we can't change our behaviors until we change how we see reality. So that is the challenge, and it takes courage to be able to say, I think like Ross has come to this realization that he needs to be himself regardless of the risks. Now, that's a really courageous stance to take. Fearless in business. How can you dare go out there and present yourself in society saying, I really don't know how to solve this problem. I don't have the tools. I don't have the skills. For a consultant, that's the same. That's actually telling people, please fire me because I don't know how to help you. However, until we acknowledge that we do not know how to solve these problems, we're not going to be able to solve them. Now, the realization also is that if we can do this, and it takes courage to do it in a group, can you say this in such a way that you invite people in and say, the realization is that we all don't know how to do this. However, together, maybe we can figure this out. It's inviting people into what we call a generative conversation. Sorry about that. And we'll be talking about this next week. What is it? How do we generate or create or stimulate a generative conversation or generative dialogue around the big question? What is it that we want? What is it that we need to do? Fair enough. Yes, Ross. So this is the challenge. And so, Destin, you were asking the big question. That's what we're going to get into next week. And as you can see at the bottom here on this slide, what is different in regeneration from sustainable development and sustainability is that it's not about our behaviors. Our behaviors are only the symptoms of something else. Regenerative practice begins by focusing on human consciousness first. And that, again, is a courageous step. And the person I blanked out on before with Peter Senge is Otto Scharmer, of course, and U Theory, and the work he's doing. And I've got some examples of that, of we need to focus inward before we can focus outward. And so the intent, for example, of your self-assessment and the questionnaire and your action plan is for you to focus inward on yourself, on what do you need to do to then become that person who can go out there and say, hey guys, all of this is not good enough. We need to see something, we need to discuss something much deeper and more important if we're going to have that impact that we want to have. And actually creating the bridge for you to have the courage to take the first steps is the purpose of this course. What is that bridge? How do you build the bridge from consciousness to behavior? From transforming yourself to helping other people transform themselves. Whether they're on your colleagues on the board of your company, or whether they are very poor farmers in Burundi, or whether they are intellectuals who believe that they know everything. How do you get people to the table to have a conversation about not knowing anything about anything and saying, well, what is the big question? And the big question is, what is the most important thing that we can do today to make real positive change happen? Without any framework, without anything, my regenerative leadership framework is useless on paper. It's only if you understand what's beneath the principles that something can happen. But if we don't follow those principles, and hopefully I'll make those principles clear in my writing and the conversation we have, and in the questioning, I want you to question the principles of the framework to see, like you kick the tires of a new car or a second-hand car. Do they work? Can we test drive this? The framework is useless until you actually translate it into something practical. But that's something practical. The first thing is about transforming yourself. And that, looking yourself or myself in the mirror, yes, intentional labor is correct, is sometimes problematic. Sometimes we don't want to see ourselves in the mirror and acknowledge or recognize that maybe we're not as good as what we'd like to do as we want to be. And we need to focus on that. And this, I think, as Bryn was bringing out, this sort of holistic approach. How do we develop? What the hell is this holistic approach? It's nonsense until you can break it down into key operating principles. And that's where it suddenly begins to make sense. And for you to create a program or a business plan or a communications plan or an education program that actually shows how these principles can be turned into practice, that's where the impact begins. And that's the focus of the project. The what is your problem? The how and the why is something I hope to help you with. So that's the intent there of becoming regenerative. Any questions? Is that clear?
Thank you.
All right. So, as I said before, the triple top line, yada yada, we've mentioned this. The idea is we can't redesign what we do until we redefine who we are. This is that ongoing iterative process that continues. And Ross mentioned.
Oh, no. I'm just sharing the full quotation. Sorry.
Okay. So the idea of redefining who we are is the critical first step. Can we take that first step? And that's the purpose of this course. Can you do a self-assessment of yourself, see where you have your strengths, see where you have your areas of growth, and then build on that? Go ahead, Firas.
Going to the main subject of the sessions, regenerating. I would like to specify the regenerating. When it will come to me to like the alert to redo something, usually I'm doing something, then when it comes to redoing something or regenerate something, that means there is a specific time. It is due time to regenerate. So from your experience in this field, can you simply tell us the regeneration should start when exactly and how I can feel it, for example?
Interesting. A difficult question, maybe. The time is now. If we're talking about time, now as to what to do, it is about how understanding who we truly are. Can you actually take a look at how you work with others? In your own leadership, how do you communicate with others? How do you share your ideas with others? And how do you invite them or not invite them in? And we're beginning, you're actually bringing in some of the principles of the regenerative leadership framework that we'll be discussing in greater depth next week. One will be, do you have a strong sense of personal purpose? Do you have a why, what you do things? Do you have a strong purpose in construction of actually creating a prosperous, healthy, better planet environmentally, socially, and economically? Do you have a driving purpose like that, Firas?
Yeah, yes, for sure. I understand that. It comes just brewing to my mind. Usually when we study at the early beginning how to become a leader, for example, or in the future how to become a leader.
Sure.
So when we reach to this station as a leaders, then now start regenerating the leadership or to regenerate the leaders. So this is just it rings a bell, and I just need to discuss it with you. That's it.
Okay. Well, we certainly, hopefully this will come out in the conversation, or if not, we can actually discuss it ourselves. So, but always, the purpose is the starting point. If not, and we'll be looking at this next week in the framework, and before the framework, if we don't have our personal purpose, we follow the purposes of others. Does that make sense?
Yes, clear. Thank you.
So we need to make sure that, and this is what I call the difference between a progressive and evolutionary cycle or a regressive cycle. A regressive cycle is where we don't become ourselves, our genuine selves, because we have not found that purpose. And that's the things that we go through in our teenage years of, I want to know who I am, and so we rebel. But very often, because of the programming and cultural dominations that we have, and identities, people never find their purpose, and therefore they have to follow someone else's, and therefore they become compliant with another system, the directives of others. Freeing yourself from that and becoming yourself is the first step in regeneration. We've got to regenerate ourselves before we can help others regenerate others. And as I say in my own, presumably you all have a personal philosophy of leadership, whether you have expressed it or not. And that philosophy very often says, my mission is to empower others to do something. And that is a lie. We do not empower others. We help others empower themselves. So recognizing that we have no power to do things to other people is critically important and helps our humility as well. Obviously, somebody who is in a very difficult, dire emergency, they need help to be able to get out of where they are, whether it's on the bottom, below the bottom rung of poverty, or whether they've been in a car crash. People need first aid. They need triage. After that, people need to be able to build their own prosperity, their own identity. So we do not transfer our own culture to other people. We say, what do you need? Can we help? And then they actually build themselves up. This is part of the regenerative process as well. We don't know better than the people on the ground what they need. They know what they need and they want. Can we help them do it and accomplish it? And that's part of impact as well. So these are some of the things we'll continue working on as we go through. So I mentioned this before, the idea of moving away from that sort of sustainability leadership tone into a different kind of tone. The idea of going from responsibility to inspiration. As the leader, how can we inspire people to want to change? Not tell them off and tell them that they have an obligation. No, this is an opportunity to create abundance and lifelong health for people, access to great things. We have this, unfortunately, mindset of there are scarce resources, there's not enough for everybody, I'm going to take what I can and then screw everybody else. That is not the right kind of paradigm we want to create. In the regenerative space, our values are much more focused on making things personal rather than organizational. So that's why the action plan is about you and me, not about us. It's about what can I do to become better and regenerative. What are the possibilities rather than the limitations? Can we see beyond the very horrible things that are happening to identify possibilities, the seeds of hope, the seeds of regeneration, the seeds of new plants, the replanting of ideas and values? Can we get away from homophobia? Can we get away from religious intolerance? Can we get away from ideological intolerance into opportunities for conversation that are more hopeful and helpful? Right, exactly. Destin, you want to say something? Yes, go ahead.
No, I think I just done that. I knew that.
Okay. Again, it's impossible to solve climate change ourselves. And therefore, very often people give up because we got global poverty, global health, we've got forced migration, we've got all these problems that we can't possibly solve. And Greta Thunberg is not going to solve them herself. And unfortunately, Greta Thunberg is a very angry person. So she is not the best person to regenerate situations, though she is well-intentioned. We need to find how can we operate from love and focus on the local, not the global. The global will take care of itself if we take care of the local. And that is the premise of how do we go from local impact to solving global problems. Otherwise, we become pessimistic and fatalistic, so we give up. I can't do anything about this. And in countries like the United States, which has just moved away from all the environmental regulations and protections and gone away from the Paris Climate Accord, and has created this crisis of for businesses to say, well, now we've been trying to do the right thing and going in the right direction. Now the oil people are going to be able to do whatever they want and get away with anything. How do you compete with that? So we need to find local ways of making an impact that can actually help solve our issues here at home. And for those of you like Destin or who may be far away from the place where they want to make an impact, how do you bridge that so that you can? And actually, in week 3, we're going to be having a guest speaker, Michael Jones, who actually has a group, a nonprofit in the UK, but he is working in Africa with farmers through WhatsApp and bringing solutions and carbon credits and all sorts of economic opportunities to farmers in Africa. So we're going to be looking at how he has applied some of the principles of the regenerative leadership framework to the work that he does, where a lot of what he does is through WhatsApp. So how do you actually generate prosperity through technology and actually create conversations and connection through not necessarily always being on the ground? And so for some of you who are far away from your clients or your stakeholders, that might be an interesting conversation. So can we move from respect for things to love for things? Can we love our planet and ourselves and each other in such a way that we can actually share things together even when we're very different in what we believe, in who we are, in where we come from, and what we have? And can we sit down and have a conversation where we are all equal, which is another of the key premises of regeneration, where we're all partners in this situation. There's not people who are poor that I have to help, and I'm the great white God who has the money, and I'm going to help you come out of your situation. How can we stop that kind of premise, and how can we all recognize that we are all equal in this conversation and all equally have the potential to make the solutions happen? And so, rather than having this hope for the future of the planet, can we believe in ourselves and each other? We have lost so much faith in each other. Can we regenerate faith in ourselves and one another? And without that, of course, we can't trust each other. We can't trust them. And so when people come together who are very different, that conversation is very hard to have. And the key to regeneration, for us, which is the next dimension, is the quality of the conversations that you can actually engage in. And that's one of the things we will be discussing next week. How we create these conversations around regenerative practice. And then we took a quick look at that. Obviously, everything is tied to the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN from 2015 to 2030. So you can make these connections, and you'll see that you can probably connect to everything in here. And it's really 16 goals. And then the 17th goal is creating partnerships. The United Nations finally has recognized that the essence to making any of the other 16 work is collaboration across the world. And so how you generate or regenerate collaboration is going to be the secret recipe for success, for creating that impact. Go ahead, listen. You wanted to say something?
Yes, thank you. As I like to pay attention for words, I've heard that there's some words which came much more times when you were teaching. Like the first one, understanding who we are, consciousness, courage to take decisions, and realities. And my question was how these 4 things, as I word them in my paper properly, how can these factors can shape in taking better decisions? You might have said that, but I didn't get that.
Well, there's I can bring in another big word, which is more of an academic word. Are you familiar with the term metacognition? Cognition is knowledge or understanding. Meta is beyond. The idea, and it's a very simple process. Do you observe yourself in action? So consciousness happens. We can only behave as good as our consciousness. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Okay. So if we can observe how we behave, if we can observe our actions when we engage in dialogue with others, we begin to see where our cultural programming actually takes us into inadequate types or mistaken ways of communicating. So when we call a generative conversation is a conversation where everybody feels safe, where everybody is at the same level around the table, and everybody feels that they have a real voice that will be trusted and respected. Now, in the way we behave with others, we often communicate, even unconsciously, that we don't believe that everybody around the table is equal to me or to each other, and that we are all willing to actually share what we really know, what we really want, honestly and transparently, in vulnerability. So one of the things I encourage us all to do is to have that little you on your shoulder watching you as you act with others, because that will help you see where you behave unconsciously and actually communicate things that will not help others engage with you openly and transparently. So does that make sense? All right. So we only behave based on our range of consciousness. If we believe that we've been highly educated and we know, that'll come across in how we speak with others. If we realize that other people know as much as we do in other things, and that they're an essential resource for us to be able to answer that question about what is the most important thing we need to do here at this time, then that conversation will be horizontal, not vertical, not me talking down to people or people talking down to me. I mean, again, in Ferris's case with business people were very powerful. They know better than anybody else quite often about what is the right thing to do in order to maintain the prosperity and the profit of the model. And therefore, somebody comes, like Ferris comes in and says, well, yes, but we need to do better, we need to treat people better, or we need to treat the environment better. They look at you like they're crazy. This is what we call, how can you create the conversation between a tree hugger and a CEO in the boardroom? And that's a challenge. How do you do that? So these are the kinds of questions that hopefully we'll be answering over the next few days. And one answer to that is to help the CEO understand that the consequences of their industry are killing people, including their own family. When people see very close to them that what they're doing affects the people they love, that's when they begin to realize that, oh, maybe I need to do something differently. But you need to understand the psyche, the psychology of the people you speak with. So you need to understand them before you even engage in the conversation. Can you do that? And then be quite humbly help them understand for themselves where they are and what they're doing, and that there are better ways of doing things. That will come from them, not from you. Again, a consultant is a very old model of profession. A consultant is normally hired to say, hey, we've got some problems. Please come in, diagnose the problem, tell us how to fix it. This is what doctors do very badly. They diagnose a thing, they give you the medication, they do the surgery, and hopefully everything works. If it doesn't, well, you've taken away the fee and you've gone, and it's their problem. In regeneration, you create a conversation within the organization about the organization's identity, not coming in with an off-the-shelf solution based on what you think is the problem, which very often is not the problem, and which causes more problems as you go. This is the unanticipated or unintended consequence that we want to avoid. So we'll continue. We'll continue the conversation as we go. Oh, I got something going here. Just a minute. Right. So moving along. So here's the discussion format. So we're closing out. We've got a few minutes left. So this week, the reading of chapter 1. For next week, read chapter 2, if you can. browse the PowerPoint and the video, the recording of Chapter 2, which is on the framework. Chapter 2 is on the framework. You have the option to answer the discussion forum, and then if you want to actually write the journal, that'll come to me if you write it into the Moodle website, the course website. And next week, Chapter 2, very important. Watch the video on the TED Talk by Majora Carter. Now, this video goes back to 2006 or 2007. Some people say, don't you have newer stuff? Well, there is newer stuff, but this is still the best talk that for me embodies the principles of regenerative leadership. So I will ask you to watch this video. It's called Majora Carter, Greedy in the Ghetto. The link is in week 2. And we'll be discussing that and seeing, once we get into the framework itself, what characteristics of Majora Carta can you see that reflect regenerative leadership, and which of these would you like to develop further? Does that make sense? So I'll say no more. I'll leave it up to you. And obviously, go through the week 2 resources. We'll open those up over the weekend so you can take a look at them. And start thinking about what you would like to do for your project. And if you've already got some ideas, just email them to me directly. And I'll be glad to take a look at them and provide some feedback, start up a conversation, and start moving things along. So are there any final questions or comments before we finish off?
From my side, thank you.
Well, thank you. It's been a real pleasure to have you here, and I'm very excited about seeing some of the things you come up with, and really looking forward to seeing how we move things forward into a more regenerative space. And thank you for your questions and your comments and the conversation. This is always, it's a joy to be able to see people like you doing phenomenal things where you are, and working on yourselves. So wonderful to have a courageous group of people here participating in this. So I wish you all well. Have a great weekend, and I'll hopefully see you on Friday next week. I'll stay on for a second in case anybody wants to have a private word, but otherwise, thank you and all the best.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.